American.
Mexican.
And you're American now?
Yes.
Good.
La Reina de Los Angeles, with the largest Spanish-speaking population in the U.S., with other large Latin populations in New York, Chicago, Miami, El Paso, and so on.
I was born in the city of Torreón.
I was born in Mexico.
I'm Mexican. Yucatan to Mexico.
In the state of Jalisco.
I was born in San Nicolás, Argentina.
Nací en Guadalajara, Jalisco, México.
I was born in Mexico City.
I'm from Bogota, Colombia. I'm Costa Rican. From Mexico City, Mexico.
We Latin Americans are all related. Indian descendants of the first settlers of this continent. Our hair is dark. Our face is bronze. We're the second largest minority in the United States. Our heritage is old and rich. And yet there are some people just learning to be proud of it. Some people are even rejecting it because they don't know themselves. But I think we cannot know ourselves until we know our past.
Nobody knows when our Indian ancestors settled this continent. We see only the remnants of their forgotten glory. In 1 century, from the early 14th to the early 15th, a small tribe of Aztecs built an empire in Mexico as brilliant and powerful as any in the old world.
Corriendo va el venado y el indio ya lo ve. Y suelta una flecha y hay algo que comer.
There was a legend among the Aztecs that a white god would come and take over the Aztec Empire. He came from Spain, across the ocean, and conquered.
But only the empire fell. My Indian ancestors, Aztecs, Mayans, Toltecs, and their tribes and nations suffered, but they survived.
We go back also to those Spanish conquistadores who came from the old world into the new long before Jamestown and Plymouth Rock.
From the slaves and the conquerors, something new was born, the mestizo. Some Indian, some Spanish. Indeed, my name is Rodriguez. Maybe the blood of the Spaniards is in my blood. Maybe the blood of Cortez, conqueror of our Aztec ancestors.
Or Ponce de Leon, the seeker after the fountain of youth. Or Coronado, the seeker after the mythical golden 7 cities of Cibola. We also go back to those Spaniards who did not take, but tried to give. Like that missionary for whom the Indians were God's children, Father Bartolomé de las Casas. Builder of missions, shepherd of souls.
All my ancestors, our ancient gods and their Christian God melted into the Christianity of the Latinos.
The conquerors asked for and received the blessings of the soil. In the beginning, it was an exchange.
We gave our native crops to the new masters. In return, the Spanish brought European farming to the natives of America. Horses, cattle, sheep and goats, burros, chickens. But they took the wealth of the earth, and they took the fruits of our labor.
During the 300 years of Spanish rule, conditions grew steadily worse for the Indian. Land grants grew in size, and so did the power of the owners, the haciendados. The Indians became serfs and slaves. Attempts to better their lot brought harsh punishment. Local revolts culminated in general dissatisfaction with foreign rule throughout the Americas. Simón Bolívar led the victorious revolt against the Spanish in South America, while the parish priest of the village Dolores, Father Miguel Hidalgo, sounded the first outcry for Mexican freedom. While Mexico was struggling to free herself from European domination, things began to change. Texas, across the Rio Grande, was part of Mexico. But the frontier was open land. White colonists crossed it and were welcomed.
At first, until they took away our land.
The Mexican governors fought the newcomers. The annexation of Texas was followed by an unpopular Mexican-American war. It was unpopular even in the U.S. Yet, the westward march was not to be stopped. Wrote a New York editor in 1845,
"Our manifest destiny to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent which Providence has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty and federated self-government."
the whole Southwest became American for $15 million that was paid to Mexico.
The fate of our people was clear. We were to become Americans. In Mexico, they still remember the $15 million. They speak of us, Mexican Americans, as our brothers who were sold. Yet we believed in our new country. We were ready and willing to die for it. Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Southeast Asia. We paid the price for citizenship in blood, but did we get it? We fought with honor, but did we become first-class citizens? Our fathers died so that the promise of liberty and self-government would be passed on to their children. Has the promise been kept?
Christianity and family ties are a precious heritage to the Mexican American. La familia means not only the children, but also the extended family, the grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and in-laws, many of whom live across the border in ancestral villages and towns which were once all part of one country. Many live in poverty and long for the promised land across the border.
Promised land, the ancestral land in which they were not wanted.
Wetbacks, they are called, braceros, unwanted, exploited.
The illegal immigrant faces instant deportation if he gets caught. Fear of discovery forces him to live in constant anxiety and sometimes to suffer silently under discrimination and unfair labor practices.
It is said that hundreds, maybe thousands of illegal immigrants live secretly in the Southwest.
Why illegal? Why exploited? Why in fear of deportation when all we want is work?
Up from El Centro and San Bernardino, Bakersfield, Fresno, Madera, Merced, Salinas and Stockton, up to Sacramento, Santa Rosa, and Red Bluff, and on back again. 100,000 men, women, and children flow on the highway, the young and the old, an unending cycle of sowing and reaping.
But the so-called Latino has changed. As conditions became more difficult, a new kind of leader arose, like Cesar Chavez.
Supported by Americans of all colors.
They're poor. They don't have many spokesmen in Washington. They don't have many people fighting for them. There's nobody that's terribly interested in them or in their problem and the effort that they're making. So the result is they've been ignored. And the result is they've suffered tremendously. So that there is this frustration and there is apt to be this explosion.
Out of these frustrations arose strikes, boycotts, protest marches demanding equal treatment.
This successful action called attention to the grievances of the Mexican American, who demanded equal opportunity in education, in the administration of justice, in employment, in housing, and in political representation. Suddenly, there was a dramatic surge of pride and power.
We looked around and we saw, as if with new eyes, the gifts we gave to this continent. The churches that bore the mark of our Spanish heritage, our Spanish language, our Indian languages, gave names to rivers and roads, to states and cities.
Nevada, Nuevo México, todas estas tierras fueron perdidas. Y al presente nos encontramos rogándole al gobierno. Reyes, López, Tijerina, en Nuevo México.
The American cowboy is part of the Mexican cultural past. The rodeo is part of the same tradition.
We as cowboys today have taken many things from the Mexican vaquero. First thing would be our chaps for breast protection on riding out in the country. Another thing, of course, our saddles, the toe fenders. And then we also have gotten our ropes, that we call them today.
The pageantry of the Southwest has its origin in the Mexican and Spanish traditions. Colorful fiestas celebrate religious or historic events like the liberation of Mexico. The music and Mexican dances enrich the American way of life. Even the Mexican food was readily adopted and became part of the American diet. The faces of stars of Mexican-American origin are familiar to audiences the world over. Men and women of Latin descent have gained prominence in politics and education. A new generation of Mexican Americans is growing up, carrying the heritage of the Indian and Spanish genius for art. The painters of our suffering, Siqueiros, Rivera, Orozco, led to a rebirth of the colossal mural art of Mexico. Brothers in spirit and art of the great Spaniard, Picasso, himself nurtured on Goya, Velázquez, Cervantes, who in literature out of the soul of Spain created Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. Nobel Prize winners, Gabriela Mistral from Chile, Juan Ramón Jiménez from Puerto Rico, Miguel Ángel Asturias from Guatemala, Luis Federico Leloir from Argentina, and Pablo Neruda from Chile. A proud heritage indeed.
I believe very firmly that the ancient Mexican heritage has a direct relevance to us. We are descendants of anywhere from 3 to 30 million people living in central Mexico at the time of the arrival of the Spaniards. No, there is no doubt that the majority of us are Indians, descendants of Indians.
the Aztecs possessed probably the largest and the best organized city to be found in the Western Hemisphere and in Europe at the time.
The Aztecs had developed highly advanced forms of psychiatry. They were already able to classify various forms of mental illness and were involved in psychosurgery. 500 years before Freud, they were already delving into dream interpretation and the unconscious. Yet, while their cultural heritage is much the same, Mexican Americans don't all think alike.
Many Mexican Americans, or Americans of Mexican descent, as I prefer to call them, have done very well for themselves. They live in very fine homes, they have fine businesses, they have cars.
There are the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of people that very clearly have suffered from exploitation, from racism.
The term Chicano denotes a progressive political movement that is primarily spearheaded by young Mexican Americans. The aims of the Chicano movement are to seek better education, better housing, better employment.
I disagree totally with the methods of attempting to achieve those goals. I feel that they are giving an improper image of themselves.
In order to break the vicious cycle of programmed poverty, we identify as Chicanos, not as Mexican Americans.
I think we must move beyond the Aztec or Maya heritage.
The one way you can exploit people and use them for semi-kinds of slavery is to take away their history, take away their culture.
I think we must go back to the Spaniards, who were great explorers.
The only relation I really hold to my Spanish heritage is that I can speak Spanish.
Many children and many parents speak Spanish, and many teachers do not. So the teachers are unable very often to communicate with parents and with children.
You know, one of the things that really is most insulting is that people try to put us down. Say you're a minority.
We have no say in our destiny.
We're not a minority movement because we're the majority of the people here on this hemisphere, from the tip of Alaska down to the bottom of South America.
Many in the Chicano community have asked that Mexican American studies be included in the elementary and secondary schools. I feel this would be important.
There are many points of view within the Mexican American community, and one should not expect otherwise. Why should the Mexican American community be any more homogeneous or unified than any other similar group of people? Nonetheless, for survival, for the well-being of our people, we should be united, and I'm sure that in time we will become more united.
The future that is here in this country cannot be equaled by any other country. I think we're living in a privileged area if people would only learn to take advantage of the many things that are offered to them or that are available to them.
Undoubtedly, the opportunities are here. So are the barriers. We must work together to be sure that these opportunities become equally available to all.
Call us what you will, Chicanos, Latinos, Mexican Americans, we are on the move. How far and how fast we will go is up to the young.